Hello, and welcome to The Bard's Truth with your host, The Green Bard. This is episode 4.10. Okay, my decimals are wrong. But either way, it's episode 4-10 of the Direwolves of Winterfell, Summer and the Winged Wolf, Aloft, covering Bran's final 2 chapters in A Dance with Dragons. A Dance with Dragons, Bran 2. As they approach Bloodraven's cave, Summer is protective and mirroring Bran's fear all at once. He seems also to have to protect their group from the rest of his pack. I do wonder if Varamir is plotting a betrayal or revenge on Summer, or is his personality fading away inside the wolf, meaning the threatening of the party is just wolves being wolves. Hopefully the latter, we'll see. But the air was sharp and cold and full of fear. Even Summer was afraid. The fur on his neck was bristling. The shadows stretched against the hillside, black and hungry. All the trees were bowed and twisted by the weight of the ice they carried. Some hardly looked like trees at all. Buried from root to crown in frozen snow, they huddled on the hill like giants, monstrous and misshapen creatures hunched against the icy wind. They are here. Later in the chapter. Those wolves are close as well, Bran warned them, the ones that have been following us. Summer can smell them whenever we're downwind. Later in the chapter. Wordless for once, Hodor slapped the snow off his legs and plowed upward through the snowdrifts with Bran upon his back. Cold Hand stalked beside them, his blade in a black hand. Summer came after. In some places the snow was higher than he was, and the big direwolf had to stop and shake it off after plunging through the thin crust. As they climbed, Bran turned awkwardly in his basket to watch as Myrra slid an arm beneath her brother to lift him to his feet. He's too heavy for her. She's half-starved. She's not as strong as she was. She clutched her frog spear in her other hand, jabbing the tines into the snow for a little more support. Myrra had just begun to struggle up the hill, half dragging and half carrying her little brother, when Hodor passed between 2 trees, and Bran lost sight of them. That separation of the party, even though it's not a separation from the direwolf, is ominous. Part of a slow build-up to when the whites appear. When they're closer to the whites, Summer seems to sense them, and his careful nature comes out as he backs away. In the next passage, Bran clearly shows that his bond with Summer is strong enough that their senses meld together in full waking. He doesn't go into a trance, but smells whatever Summer smells. Recall the first time I feel that this may have happened in the series, at the tail end of the wildling attack on Bran in A Game of Thrones, when Bran saw everything. This passage is clear proof that a warg is capable to share senses with the beast in that way, in full waking. Recall also the scene where Varamir is guarding Jon when Stannis attacked Mance's army. He is skin-changing the eagle, primarily, but also using his 5 other skins simultaneously while muttering under his breath. Summer stopped suddenly, at the bottom of a steep stretch of unbroken white snow. The direwolf turned his head, sniffed in the air, then snarled. Fur bristling, he began to back away. "Hodor, stop," said Bran. "Hodor, wait." Something was wrong. Summer smelled it, and so did he. Something bad. Something close. "Hodor, no, go back." Then the whites attack at the mouth of the cave at nightfall. Summer in action protecting Bran is amazing again, but his instincts to tear out the throat of the whites seems a bit ineffectual at disabling a white. Tearing off limbs and eating the face is more effective. It makes me wonder if Bran is influencing Summer's varying tactics here. But suddenly Summer was between them. Bran glimpsed his skin tear like cheap cloth, heard the splintering of bone. He saw a hand and wrist rip loose, pale fingers wriggling. The sleeve faded black rough spun. Black, he thought. He's wearing black. He was one of the watch. Summer flung the arm aside, twisted, and sank his deep teeth into the dead man's neck under the chin. When the big gray wolf wrenched free, he took most of the creature's throat out, in an explosion of pale, rotten meat. Later in the chapter. The last light had vanished from amongst the trees by then. Night had fallen. Cold Hands was hacking and cutting at the circle of dead men that surrounded him. Summer was tearing at the one he'd brought down, its face between his teeth. No one was paying any mind to Bran. He crawled a little higher, dragging his useless legs behind him. If I can reach that cave. In the passage that follows, Bran has slipped Hodor's skin, which probably saved Hodor in this case. But it put Bran's own body in considerable danger, with Summer left alone to guard it. Bran wonders why Summer is taking such risks, out of character given the caution we usually see from Summer, but it's obvious that his protective instinct is driving him to this risky behavior. Without Leaf interceding, Summer and Bran both might have died. Bran is right to worry that he'd be stuck in Hodor. Fortunately, it doesn't come to that. Summer was snarling and snapping as he danced around the closest, a great ruin of a man wreathed in swirling flame. He shouldn't get so close. What is he doing? Then he saw himself, sprawled face down in the snow. Summer was trying to drive the thing away from him. What will happen if it kills me? The boy wondered. Will I be Hodor for good or all? Will I go back into Summer's skin? Or will I just be dead? It's a good question. He would have a second life. Either A or B is possible for the vessel. Somehow Bran returns to his body and a white that Leaf set ablaze is attacking Bran. Note that it is naked. Was this one of Craster's mutineers? One of the Rapers? How long after Sam's escape did the others attack the keep? Back to Bran. He is saved when a tree shakes off snow to cover him. Note that the tree shook. The snow did not just fall. I believe this to be an indication of Bloodraven acting through the weirwood net. He was not going to take any risks that his star protege might come to harm on his own doorstep. As the episode closes with everyone safe, Summer is back with Bran, shadowing. Everything turned inside out and upside down. Bran found himself back inside his own skin, half buried in the snow. The burning white loomed over him, etched tall against the trees in their snowy shrouds. It was one of the naked ones Bran saw, in the instant before the nearest tree shook off the snow that covered it, and dropped it all down upon his head. The next he knew, he was lying on the bed of pine needles beneath a dark stone roof. The cave. I'm in the cave. His mouth still tasted of blood where he'd bitten his tongue, but a fire was burning to his right, heat washing over his face, and he had never felt anything so good. Summer was there, sniffing round him, and Hodor, soaking wet. Mira cradled Jojen's head in her lap, and the Arya thing stood over them, clutching her torch. A Dance with Dragons, Bran 3. Bran's final chapter in this volume focuses on his training as a greenseer. Summer is leaving the cave periodically to hunt, mostly without Bran, though Bran does sometimes watch as a raven instead of inside Summer's skin. In an early lesson, it seems that Bran gets bored listening to Bloodraven, and he falls right into Summer's consciousness, the wolf's senses overpowering the boys. At first he is listening to his teacher, clearly noticing the sounds of leaves and wood, and then he is in Summer, seeing snowflakes fall in the trees. Note the symbolism of soldier pines and sentinels in white. One might think it is just a flourishing description, but the militaristic language probably foreshadows that the White Walkers have the cave under siege. There he sat, listening to the hoarse whispers of his teacher. Never fear the darkness, Bran. The Lord's words were accompanied by a faint rustling of wood and leaf, a slight twisting of his head. The strongest trees are rooted in the dark places of the earth. Darkness will be your cloak, your shield, your mother's milk. Darkness will make you strong. The moon was a crescent, thin and sharp as the blade of a knife. Snowflakes drifted down soundlessly to cloak the soldier pines and sentinels in white. The drifts grew so deep that they covered the entrance to the caves, leaving a white wall that Summer had to dig through whenever he went outside to join his pack to hunt. Bran did not oft range with them in those days, but some nights he watched them from above. As you can see, Bran is describing skin-changing a raven in this instance. It's a bit disorienting because that was the first he'd ever mentioned it. Now we skip back to his first lesson on that skill. The scene is a bit of comic relief, actually. Calm before the storm? But there's actually a lot to learn here about the magic and how George R. R. Martin thinks about the magic, consciousness sharing, and especially second lives. Skin-changing a bird is more difficult than with Summer, as we would have expected from Varamir's chapter, though we presume these ravens are easier than some birds because they are used to being skin-changed. Indeed, we learn at the end of the passage that all of them have consciousnesses of long-dead singers inside of them, children of the forest, that is. This is huge. The implication that all these birds have dead children of the forest inside them seems to mean that the consciousness of these singers moves again whenever a bird dies. That suggests that with the singers in these birds, it is not a second life, but potentially a series of second lives. Dare I say infinite lives? This goes beyond what we are told in Varamir's chapter. It begs one to wonder, Could this also be the case with other beasts? I wonder specifically about ghosts, inside whom Jon Snow is presumably now spending his own second life. Could this phenomenon inform us of the mechanism for his expected resurrection? Please note, this is not a theory, but a question. It also may be something that does not apply to human consciousnesses, only those in tune with the weirwood network, green seers, and children of the forest. Slipping into Summer's skin had become as easy for him as slipping on a pair of breeches had once been, before his back was broken. Changing his own skin for a raven's night black feathers had been harder, but not as hard as he had feared. Not with these ravens. A wild stallion will buck and kick when a man tries to mount him, and try to bite the hand that slips the bit between his teeth, Lord Brynden said, but a horse that has known one rider will accept another. Young or old, these birds have all been ridden. Choose one now and fly. He chose one bird, and then another, without success, but the third raven looked at him with shrewd black eyes, tilted its head, and gave a quark, and quick as that he was not a boy looking at a raven, but a raven looking at a boy. The song of the river suddenly grew louder, the torches burned a little brighter than before, and the air was full of strange smells. When he tried to speak, it came out in a scream, and his first flight ended when he crashed into a wall and ended back inside his own broken body. The raven was unhurt. It flew to him and landed on his arm, and Bran stroked its feathers and slipped inside of it again. Before long he was flying around the cavern, weaving through the long stone teeth that hung down from the ceiling, even flapping out over the abyss and swooping down into its cold black depths. Then he realized he was not alone. Someone else was in the raven, he told Lord Brynden, once he had returned to his own skin. Some girl. I felt her. A woman, of those who sing the Song of Earth, his teacher said. Long dead, yet a part of her remains, just as a part of you would remain in summer if your boy's flesh were to die upon the morrow. A shadow on the soul. She will not harm you. Do all the birds have singers in them? All, Lord Brynden said. It was the singers who taught the first men to send messages by raven. But in those days the birds would speak the words. The trees remember, but men forget. And so now they write the messages on parchment and tie them round the feet of birds who have never shared their skin. Fascinating. It seems in the past that the gift, king's blood as I call it, was a lot more common. Fascinating indeed. We again learn from a Warging episode that the cave is truly under siege, though no others are visible. It also seems that Summer is staying away a lot with the pack. This is concerning, given our ongoing theme of bad things happening when the wolves are separated from their Stark protectees. To compound that, Summer is also losing weight. The moon was fat and full. Summer prowled through the silent woods, a long gray shadow that grew more gaunt with every hunt, for living game could not be found. The ward upon the cave mouth still held. The dead men could not enter. The snows had buried most of them again, but they were still there, hidden, frozen, waiting. Other dead things came to join them, the things that had once been men and women, even children. Dead ravens sat on bare brown branches, wings crusted with ice. A snow bear crashed through the brush, huge and skeletal, half its head sloughed away to reveal the skull beneath. Summer and his pack fell upon it and tore it into pieces. Afterward they gorged, though the meat was rotten and half frozen, and moved even as they ate it. Later we learn that the children of the forest are feeding Bran's group rat meat, and Mira is catching fish. But Summer must be eschewing this nourishment for some reason. I wonder if being north of the wall and separated from his true pack is making Summer even more independent, more wild. Either way, he is hunting dead things quite a bit. Note that Bran again is eating the flesh of dead men in the wolf's skin, and he is also using Hodor's body. On one such occurrence, he finds a cavern filled with singers seemingly clinging to life as they are absorbed by the tree roots. Are these green seers? We are not given the eye colors, so this is a real mystery. If they are, though, this could affect the generally accepted explanation of a lot of supernatural events in our story. Could these singers be informing the actions of the old gods, biasing the more natural, tree-ish thoughts of the weirwood net? Or are they passive, and any biasing of the weirwood net is due to Bloodraven's presence? The moon was a crescent, thin and sharp as the blade of a knife. Summer dug up a severed arm, black and covered with hoarfrost, its fingers opening and closing as it pulled itself across the frozen snow. There was still enough meat on it to fill his empty belly. And after that was done, he cracked the arm bones for the marrow. Only then did the arm remember it was dead. Bran ate with Summer and his pack, as a wolf. As a raven he flew with the murder, circling the hill at sunset, watching for foes, feeling the icy touch of the air. As Hodor he explored the caves. He found chambers full of bones, shafts that plunged deep into the earth, a place where the skeletons of gigantic bats hung upside down from the ceiling. He even crossed the slender stone bridge that arched over the abyss and discovered more passages and chambers on the far side. One was full of singers, enthroned like Brynden in nests of weirwood roots that wove under and through and around their bodies. Most of them looked dead to him, but as he crossed in front of them, their eyes would open and follow the light of the torch, and one of them opened and closed a wrinkled mouth as if he were trying to speak. "Hodor," Bran said to him, and he felt the real Hodor stir down in his pit. As this volume comes to a close, we are reminded of the affection Bran has with Summer, and also that he has affection for Myrra too. We see that this is probably shared in how she pets Summer. Recalling their first affectionate moment from A Clash of Kings, this sweet moment is couched in the ominous story of Jojen, who has withdrawn, or is maybe missing and dead. I mean, he definitely stopped saying, "This is not the day I die," so I suppose that day has come or is approaching. Myrra is certainly concerned. After they discuss it, Bran wished to console Myrra, but can't physically reach her. Next, something weird happens. As Bran wishes to embrace her, and considers entering Hodor to accomplish it, she freaks out and flees. I do believe that Bran's consciousness reached out directly to Myrra, causing this reaction. Recall our discussion of the verb to reach. Instead of comforting her, he tried to skin change her. Smooth, Bran. Very smooth. The moon was a black hole in the sky. Outside the cave, the world went on. Outside the cave, the sun rose and set. The moon turned. The cold winds howled. Under the hill, Jojen grew ever more sullen and solitary to his sister's distress. She would often sit with Bran beside their little fire, talking of everything and nothing, petting Summer where he slept between them, whilst her brother wandered the caves by himself. Jojen had even taken to climbing up to the cave's mouth when the day was bright. He would stand there for hours, looking out over the forest, wrapped in furs, yet shivering all the same. Later. "He's being brave," said Bran. "The only time a man can be brave is when he is afraid," his father had told him once, long ago, on the day they found the direwolf pups in the summer snows. He still remembered. "He's being stupid," Myrra said. "I'd hoped that when we found your three-eyed crow. Now I wonder why we ever came." "For me," Bran thought. "His green dreams," he said. "His green dreams." Myrra's voice was bitter. Myrra began to cry. Bran hated being crippled then. "Don't cry," he said. He wanted to put his arms around her, hold her tight, the way Mother used to hold him back at Winterfell when he'd hurt himself. She was right there, only a few feet from him, but so far out of reach it might have been 100 leagues. To touch her he would need to pull himself along the ground with his hands, dragging his legs behind him. The floor was rough and uneven, and it would be slow going, full of scrapes and bumps. I could put on Hodor's skin, he thought. Hodor could hold her and pat her on the back. The thought made Bran feel strange, but he was still thinking it when Myrra bolted from the fire, back out into the darkness of the tunnels. He heard her steps recede until there was nothing but the voices of the singers. The final mention of Summer is when Bran is taught to enter the weirwood net. This is the ultimate achievement of him becoming a green seer, instead of just a boy with potential. The journey he's gone through to come to this point has prepared him for it. It started with green dreams, then wolf dreams, then warging, then skin-changing Hodor, then skin-changing ravens, and now skin-changing into the weirwood net directly. This volume closes as the boy unlocks an overwhelming body of living knowledge of the present, the past, and even the future. I personally don't think that fate or prophecies are set in stone, and more importantly, I don't think our author thinks this either. The future is not set, but the prophecies that arise out of the tree net are only a prediction based upon present knowledge. However, the breadth of knowledge inside these trees is so vast that they probably can see the future quite accurately. Call it a very educated guess. Either way, Bran is on the cusp of unlocking the knowledge of all this history and all these predictions. The mechanism is explained to be very similar to warging Summer, yet Bran may be only the second to do it in the past 100 years. I am extremely interested to see where his story goes in this next volume. Please, George, give us the Winds of Winter. Close your eyes, said the three-eyed crow. Slip your skin, as you do when you join with Summer, but this time go into the roots instead. Follow them up through the earth to the trees upon the hill, and tell me what you see. Bran closed his eyes and slipped free of his skin. Into the roots, he thought. Into the weirwood. Become a tree. For an instant he could see the cavern in its black mantle, could hear the river rushing by below. Now, after 10 episodes of terrific depth in the magical bond, themes upon themes, let's remember the original question we asked ourselves. Why is Bran and Summer's bond somewhat of a special case? In the words of George R.R. Martin. I hold to my hypothesis that Bran and Summer are somewhat of a special case, chiefly because of Bran's own powers and how quickly they develop in our story. Their bond is more deeply developed than any of their siblings, just as Bran's ability to use his power to communicate with and operate other beasts and beings develops more rapidly than that of his siblings. That this is happening so quickly to such a young boy does make me worry about his ability to hold on to his humanity fully. On that note, his skin-changing of Hodor is quite concerning. That said, his empathy for Mira, Jon, and others tells me he can make it through this with his sanity intact. He is also fiercely independent. This trait, mixed with stubbornness and mental strength, is a fantasy trope whereby heroes can deflect attempts at brainwashing and mind control. In this, his bond to Summer is also steadying and driving, a hunger. These traits will serve him well amidst the winds of winter. Speaking of young boys and magic, my thoughts turn to Rickon. I also wonder about his ability to hold on to his humanity and sanity given his bond to Shaggy, who seems to be a very strong and willful wolf. We'll tackle their story in Part 5. Shout out and attribution, as always, to those who've gone before me, with some of the theories that I am probably subconsciously utilizing, mentioning, and building upon here, including Rocky Rockington from Reddit, Preston Jacobs, Prof. Cecily from Reddit for her insight into Bran and Summer at the end of A Clash of Kings and the beginning of A Storm of Swords, LML, and others. Peace. Thanks to all the terrific artists who let me use their work on this YouTube video. Thanks especially to those of my family who helped in this series so far. If you enjoy this content, you can also consider supporting us on Patreon.